Zhao Shanghao. This is Professor Saifur Rahman. I'm coming before you today to talk about how to build global academic linkages and collaboration. I am the director of Virginia Tech Advanced Research Institute, USA. Also, I was the president of the IEEE Power and Energy Society 2018 and 2019. Today in this event called Voice of Industry, Global Industry Development Forum, Shenzhen, Monday, 2nd August 2021. So let's get going about the talk today that I'm going to talk about. First of all, global academic linkage and collaboration. Why is it important? Why do you have to do this to begin with? I believe, and many of my colleagues do, good science anywhere is good for science everywhere. So good science goes on in China, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, India, Europe, US, Canada, doesn't matter. If it's good science, the whole humanity must be able to see it, benefit from it, and learn from it. That is where I'm coming from. So going forward now, I am going to talk about IEEE first. IEEE is a global organization with more than 400,000, almost 400,000 members globally. However, 60% of IEEE members come from outside USA. Interesting. Here is showing you the logos of 6 engineering societies in the world. Big ones. On the upper left is ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Many of you may be members of that. Then, of course, IEEE, upper right, American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, below that ANS, American Nuclear Society, to the left, AICHE, American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and then to the left, AIAA, American Institute of Aeronautics and Aerospace. All of those 5 have American in the front, except IEEE. IEEE is a global organization, and we will talk about how IEEE can be of value to do global collaboration. Now, IEEE's motto is advancing technology for humanity. That's what we do. I'll go through this next few slides explaining how that works. First of all, a snapshot. At the end of 2020, what was IEEE looking like? If you look on the left-hand side of my screen, I talk about IEEE Explore Digital Library. Those of you do research, publish papers, I'm sure you are aware of the IEEE Digital Library Explore. You use that all the time, I'm sure. In that library, we have more than 5 million documents already accessible. If you look at the usefulness, 5 million documents. Over the years, at the end of 2020, we have counted those documents were downloaded 192 million times. 192 million times. At the same time, in 2020, we added 222,035 conference papers, not journal, conference papers in 1 year. On the right-hand side are the numbers based on membership. As I said, our membership about 400,000 globally in 160 plus countries. Highest members are in the US, then India, then China, then Canada, then Japan, the top 5 countries in terms of membership. If you look at the overall IEEE data, out of about 400,000 total members, more than 25% or 107,000 are student members. Very interesting. That means a lot of students are working on IEEE issues. Top number of members in the IEEE are from India, about close to 30,000. Next is US, followed by China, Canada, and Tunisia. Interesting. It's a small country in North Africa, Tunisia. Why so many student members? Because IEEE volunteers there are very active and have talked to many universities, colleges about the benefit students can get by becoming student members. So this is an example of how the knowledge gets transferred from one country to another. Now, those 220,000 articles are from conferences. If you look at the published journal articles and magazine articles at the end of 2020, that is, 86,052 articles from journals and magazines were published in IEEE. We also approved 138 standards in IEEE in 2020. I know there are engineers in Huawei who are serving on the IEEE Standards Association activities. So I'm happy that you are participating as an industry engineer in the standard making process. That's the standards and journal papers. On the right-hand side, talking about IEEE structure. IEEE has 10 regions in the world. I'll give you a map in a few minutes. Built around 342 sections. China has more than 10 sections. One is Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Wuhan, and many others. We also have 3,485 student branches. These are students getting organized at many universities to do IEEE related work. Also, every society in IEEE has chapters. In my society, PS, we have in China 10 chapters. Again, same thing, Beijing, Shanghai, Wuhan, Chengdu, and so on and so forth. So that's the chapter at the society level. We are big, IEEE is big in conferences. In 2020, IEEE organized and promoted 1,611 conferences in 96 countries, China included. Good news is, even though we had COVID, but between the in-person attendance and virtual attendance, almost 500,000 people attended IEEE conferences in 2020. Good. This is the global breakdown of the 10 IEEE regions. The blue on the left, US, has 6 regions, 1 through 6, East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country, and so on. Number 7, the green part, is Canada. Canada has 1 region. That's number 7. Number 8 is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Physically, in land coverage, that is the largest section. In land coverage, not number of people. Region 9 is Latin America, which is purple on the left-hand side. Number 10 is where we are. China, India, Australia, Japan, Korea, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all of those countries, New Zealand are there. So that's region 10. Even though region 8 has the largest land area, region 10 has highest number of members. Among the 400,000 members of IEEE, almost 30%, 115,000 come from region 10. That's where a lot of activities are going on today. Okay, now what do we do? The focus of today's talk is collaboration. So I'm going to go through a few slides now showing how we in IEEE are advancing industry, government participation globally. IEEE has offices in Beijing, Tokyo, Singapore, Vienna, Austria, and a few in the US. So we have global presence and we do business in many parts of the world as a result. So now, one thing everybody talks about ICT, information communication technology. Huawei is big in ICT, of course. So which societies or what parts of IEEE are focusing on ICT work? There are 4 societies focusing mainly on ICT. One, IEEE Communication Society. Second, Computational Intelligence Society, CIS, Microwave Theory and Technique Society, and Signal Processing Society. If you want to know more, please go to IEEE.org website and look up these societies. Each of them has their own websites with detailed information about their conferences, publications, standards, what they do globally in terms of collaboration and so on and so forth. I'll be very happy if you are able to visit these 4 society websites and learn more about their ICT related work within the IEEE timeframe. Now, this is the topic today: collaboration with industry. What are the challenges and what strategies we have in place to cope with those challenges? First thing I notice, we have difficulty sometimes aligning IEEE's interest with industry's interest. Many people think, and correctly to some amount, that IEEE is a publishing house. We do conferences, publish papers, produce conference articles, and so on. That is one of our business lines, but we also work on standards. For example, talk about here, talk about industry liaison, talk about student activities, many different things. So I have helped to build what is now called the third bullet on the screen, IEEE Corporate Engagement Program. What is the Corporate Engagement Program? Come to that in a second. Also, we encourage strongly industry engineers or industry technologists to participate in IEEE conferences. So the bullet 3 is my focus now, IEEE Corporate Engagement Program. What does IEEE do to bring corporations to IEEE's activities and vice versa, so that industry feels they're aligned with what IEEE does and engineers from industry can benefit from it? That's the objective. Now, one example that I was part of, we do MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, with many industries and universities globally, China one of them. I signed this MOU with State Grid Corporation in China in November 2017. Even know some of the faces on the screen. I was at the time the PS president-elect, not president yet. Behind me are IEEE officers. On the left is Huan Ning from Beijing office, and many of the CSEE members are here. That's a starting point. This is working with industry. State Grid, what they did, they are now paying membership dues of 150 engineers in State Grid. Therefore, those engineers are IEEE members without having to pay themselves IEEE dues, and they can go to conferences at reduced rate. They can serve on standards, many different things. So I think State Grid did an exemplary job to showcase how a large company can work closely with IEEE and build opportunities for the company's engineers to work with IEEE volunteers. That's an example. Going forward, if we look at more examples here, one second. As I said before, we do many conferences globally. You saw the number in 2020, 1,611 conferences, all of IEEE, not just power. This slide shows the global conferences that IEEE Power and Energy Society organizes. This is 2019 information. It's not everything here, but most of it is here. From this list of 15 or so conferences, you see 3 in China. And China is a popular destination for our conferences. Many conferences are held in China, many. These 3 are on the upper left-hand side: Asia, Pacific Power and Energy Engineering Conference held in Macau in December 2019. Next is halfway down on the middle of the picture, ISPEC, IEEE Sustainable Power and Energy Conference held in Beijing, China, first time in 2019. I was one of the organizers. Upper right-hand side in Changsha, China, the third IEEE conference on energy internet and energy system integration. Notice something here. These conferences are not just power, energy internet, sustainable power, talk about engineering for energy engineering. So we are very broad. Now, if you go to the other four societies and listed communication, CIS, and so on and so forth, signal processing and microwave theory techniques, they have also conferences, not as many, but quite a few. So my point is, please be proactive, look at what conferences you can participate, especially industry engineers. You find a lot of opportunities for networking at these conferences. So going forward now, I want to highlight one of those three conferences I talked about on the previous page. Why this is important. But I'm giving you on the lower right-hand side, the website for this conference. It goes on. This is happening every year in China now. So look at the website to know more what's going on now. It is IEEE Sustainable Power and Energy Conference, focusing on grid modernization for energy revolution. Very important because China is very, very proactive in clean energy. China is the highest platform in terms of solar and wind today, globally the top leading country. China has said by 2035, half of the country's electricity will come from non-fossil sources, renewable sources, hydro, solar, and wind. In Shenzhen is part of the China's Southern Grid. China's Southern Grid CSG today already more than 50% clean, meaning hydro, solar, and wind. No, not much coal. So this is happening today. Anyway, the point is, this is a conference, is a platform to discuss how to decarbonize, how to electrify the economy, how to make sure we can accept large amount of renewable energy to reduce carbon emission and reduce global warming potential. That's a good example of how IEEE has come forward to organize a paper and panel session based conference to issue discussion opportunities for engineers and scientists. Good. So I want to say something about my experience in China. I have been coming to China since 1985, so 36 years almost. And I have learned a lot of special ways Chinese engineers do their work. I have given lectures in more than 10 Chinese universities. I visited maybe 15 or 20 Chinese cities. I also experienced China has sent thousands and thousands of Chinese visiting scholars to US, Canada, Europe, and so on. I had many myself. They come to US, spend a year or so, learn some technique and technologies, go back and becoming successful engineers, professors in China. That is a good example of global collaboration. Also have seen joint publications by Chinese authors with foreign counterparts and publish those papers in IEEE journals. At the same time, when we hold conferences in China, like I showed ISPEC, for example, we bring in many foreign experts, professors, engineers, and so on. And they come to these conferences, meet their Chinese colleagues, and build networking opportunities so that they can keep on working together after they go home. Similarly, another aspect is Chinese publications. Chinese Society of Electrical Engineers, CSEE, and the State Grid Electric Power Research Institute in Nanjing are hosting 2 English language journals from China. And those 2 journals are hosted by IEEE Explore, so that those journal articles can get very wide publicity among the global research community. It's an example of collaboration. It's happening. We want to see more of that go on. Similarly, as you know, whoever does this, many Chinese authors, scholars, experts, academics, engineers review papers for IEEE, many, hundreds, thousands of them. So this is good job. I noticed about 2.5 years ago now, in spring of 2019, IEEE Publications Office took a position of not allowing IEEE reviewers from Huawei to review papers. That meant if you are an engineer in Huawei, you cannot review IEEE papers. That is absurd. I objected to that strongly so that IEEE can maintain its neutrality in the scholarly publication process. We are scholars. We don't care where you live, where you work. You are, as I said in the beginning, good science anywhere is good for science everywhere. So we objected to that. Then quickly IEEE removed that restriction. That is no longer the case. My point is we encourage, we appreciate, we want to see many Chinese scholars review IEEE papers, write papers for IEEE journals, and help run those journals as chief editors, and so on. I hope that goes on without any break. Now, let's talk about Chinese universities, what role they are playing in international collaboration. All of you know Tsinghua, of course. Tsinghua has a Shenzhen campus, by the way. It's Tsinghua, Berkeley, Shenzhen campus. We have a meeting every year, July, August timeframe in the US called IEEE Power and Energy General Meeting, GM. Last time it was held in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 years ago now, exactly 2 years ago. Tsinghua University sent more than 100 students, faculty, and researchers to this meeting to give papers, listen to panel sessions, 100 people. Very good. In such conferences, because so many are coming from China, in fact, at that occasion, more than 500 researchers came from China to Atlanta, Georgia, out of 2,500 or so total. That's a big number. So what we're saying, as we get so many Chinese scholars come to these conferences, we can hold workshops like ICT as an example, or issues with telecom network expansion or 5G, can do that. We also notice because of pandemic, we are not going to as many conferences, especially across international boundaries, but we can do quite a bit without being there physically. But what is important for us to remember, we have done well because we have communicated outward from China, outward from US, and vice versa. In other words, you have Tsinghua sent more than 100 students, faculty, and researchers to Atlanta, Georgia 2 years ago. The outward approach. I hope that continues and should be encouraged so that we maintain the global collaboration in science and engineering. Myself, my example, as I said already, I go to China very often. I'm very fortunate that 6 universities in China found my work useful for them. So I'm a guest professor at Tsinghua University, Beijing, Beijing Jiaotong, Southeast University in Nanjing, Huahai University in Nanjing, Northeast Electric Power University in Jilin City, and Guangxi University in Nanning. I go there often, work with their students. Many researchers and faculty members from these universities have come to my lab, spend time with me, many. So that I hope will continue to help us in the global collaboration work we are talking about. In my own case, at Virginia Tech Advanced Research Institute, I have students from many countries. Here is Nepal, China, India, China, so on. They're all working together, learning from each other. And when they go home or work for Chinese industry, they will be much better prepared to deal with the challenges we face going forward. Now, so how can IEEE helped strengthen diversification and globalization. Strengthen diversification. What does diversification mean? Let's talk about it. Diversification comes in three parts: geographical diversification, cultural diversification, and gender diversification. Geographical diversification, we talked about the 10 regions. So that's diversity based on geography. So that's happening. IEEE is very diverse, globally at present. Next is cultural diversification. Engineers are engineers, but they behave differently, they think differently, depending on what the environment around them. An engineer in Shanghai may think differently as to how to approach a problem than an engineer in Singapore or whatever, in a different country. So that we recognize, we encourage diversification, we encourage overseas collaboration within IEEE. Example I gave you already. Chinese engineers, students, faculty come to US and vice versa. That's diversification, culturally speaking. Third is gender, male, female. That is something we take very seriously. We have a lot of Chinese engineers, female engineers in our conference panels and so on and so forth. But that's the three types of diversification we need to practice more and more. If we practice those diversification different examples, we will be globalized, right? We are looking at cultural thinking in Shanghai, Singapore, and New York, for example. So that helps us to be thinking globally when you come up against problems to solve. Now, let's take one program, Women in Power. Some of you know, in IEEE has IEEE Women in Engineering, WIE program. Women in Power is a branch of WIE within IEEE. So we encourage female engineers, scientists, researchers to work with their counterparts in many parts of PES, attend conferences, attend workshops, and contribute. For example, if I show you this picture, that's in China. I was there a few years back. We encourage female engineers to stand up and ask questions and give comments. This is an example. This girl is asking me a question here. So we want to have role models of female engineers in China. They can showcase what IEEE does, and they can be role model for younger generation engineers, female engineers, so they can do well. Look at this picture. That was taken at a WIP event in China 3 years ago now. In the middle is me. On my left is Dr. Rumeli. She's from Beijing. Now she is the chair of the Women in Power program globally, all over the world. So she is a very good role model of these young girls you see on the picture here. We have people from Singapore, New Zealand, US, and many parts of China. This is what we do. This is the diversity and helping to globalize. That's how I do business here. So going forward, one is female engineers, others young professionals. A lot of engineers, they finish college, 22, 23 years of age, they enter workforce. They have no experience how to make presentations, how to write proposals. So we have this program called Young Professionals, that between the college student and the working engineer in between, we have a program for YP, Young Professional Engineers. We help them to polish their image, like be a better presenter at a company meeting. How can you build your lifelong learning practice so you can be always up to speed on any new technology like ICT? See, Malaysia, Australia, Pakistan, many countries are taking part in this. We in PES have about almost 40,000 members total. Out of the 40,000, more than 10% or 4,000 plus are members of PES, Young Professional Program globally. That's very active program. I'm very proud of that work. So now, what is an example of a common theme that IEEE is putting forward, showing how IEEE can be of value to the local community? It happens to be a smart city. Smart city has mobility, smart technologies. It has, of course, ICT. It has 5G. All of that is built in. So the Smart Cities program has brought together IEEE's many technical societies so they can advance the state of the art for smart city technologies for the benefit of society. We have, for example, bring people from industry, academia, government, and help them to move forward in the area of smart cities. We do smart buildings, smart living, smart transportation, smart energy. On the right-hand side, second column, smart communications. That's what Huawei does, in fact, part of ICT activities, smart networks. This is the network for telecommunication, self-aware digital hub, and awareness of the environment. So we are doing definitely work on smart communications, smart networks with broad ICT applications, as an example. So going forward now, that is the technical collaboration discussion we've been talking about so far. I've been asked by the organizers of this event to talk about the IEEE election coming up beginning August 16th. I'm a candidate for president this year, and my information is available on my website, srahman.org. I hope you'd learn more about me and decide whom you want to vote for. So this is me on my website srahman.org. If you go there, you'll see this video. I talk about my experience in many countries, including China. I have a message during the Chinese New Year's on the same website. Also, if you look at the next one, I have a Chinese language website for my election campaign. The URL on the top is www.saifurrahman, my full name, .org/SR2022_CN for China. If you go there, you'll see this landing page. It has my description in Chinese partly. And on the right-hand side, I have a blue box. You click on that box on my website, you'll go to a page with a form. You can send me ideas. For example, we talked about many things today at this event. If you have some ideas, some questions, comments, please visit that website, click on the blue bar and fill out the form with your information. Also, I have a one-page flyer about my China experience, what I will do in China if I become president. You click on that red button in the middle, you'll get a Chinese version of the flyer. If you want English version, download the flyer, click on the longer red button. Also, I gave you a QR code from my website. Click on the QR code, you can go to my website directly. So please, take your time, look at it, and be my guest. Send me some questions, comments, if you would. I'll appreciate that. I'll answer those myself, can guarantee you that. So this is the flyer or a poster I talked about, all in Chinese. And you can download this, give it to your friends, talk about it, write to me. In addition to being a professor at Virginia Tech, I'm also an entrepreneur. I formed a startup company called BM Controls, working on IoT devices and monitoring any IoT device on a platform that we built. If you want to know more, you can go there as well. So that's about it. I'm coming to the end of my talk today. This is my last slide. Thank you very much, Xie. I gave you my email address, s.rahman, RAHMAN, @IEEE.org. I have also given you my main website, S. Rahman, S missing, it should be srahman.org, not Rahman, srahman.org. Also, as I said, voting starts on 16th of August, will go on for 6 weeks, ending October 1st. If you don't remember anything, just remember this website, ieee.org/elections. That's it. If you click on that, not now, beginning 16 October, you'll go directly to the voting page. You'll see all candidates running for president. You can read their statements, their bio, and vote for the candidate you like. So please take your time. Don't forget, please vote when the time comes, about 2 weeks from now, exactly 2 weeks from August 2nd. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. Xie xie.